Okay, so it is Sunday, and normally on Sundays I come to you guys with my weekly reading vlogs. That is kind of what this is, but I only read one book this week, and rather than coming to you guys with little mini clips here and there, and honestly it becomes a little bit of a nightmare in editing, I just thought I would do more of a weekly wrap-up of the book that I read, giving you my thoughts and feelings on it. Spoiler-free thoughts that I have, and there'll be spoiler thoughts. But the book that I read this week, that consumed me this week, was the 1,200 page plus book, Oathbringer, the third book in the Stormlight Archives. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like that so that, yeah, I don't have to hold it the whole time. It is pretty heavy. Alright, so this is, if you haven't been following my weekly reading vlogs, this is the first time of me reading any Stormlight Archive book where I'm just reading the one book binder. For The Way of Kings, which is all the way over here now, it's kind of weird having my books like this, but anyway, The Way of Kings and Words of Radiance, with The Way of Kings, I read the UK version, the two-parter, and then Way of Kings, the one book binder arrived. With Oathbringer, I started off with the two-parter UK edition, and then I think about halfway through Words of Radiance arrived, so I was kind of doing both, juggling between part 2 of the UK edition and the one book binder. With Oathbringer, I'm just reading the one book binder. If I was reading this book as the two-parter, I'm really happy I didn't. Part 1 would have received a really low rating. I think it would have received either 2, 2.5 or 3 stars. I would have had to work it out. I just didn't find the first part to be that entertaining, and I just had to kind of mull my way through it. But the second part of the book, second half, really made up for it, and I did appreciate that. Once again, in this book we have interludes. I actually did some research on the interludes because I know that sometimes the interludes are incredibly important, and sometimes Brandon Sanderson places interludes into his Stormlight Archive books purely for that reason, so you can have a bit of an interlude. There were times when I was reading the interludes and I wasn't all there for unimportant interludes, but then for the important ones, I absolutely was. So in this book, in Oathbringer, we are following the past and present of Dalinar. So in The Way of Kings, we follow the past and present of Kaladin. In Words of Radiance, we follow the past and present of Shallan. And in Oathbringer, we follow the past and present of Dalinar. I found Dalinar's past to be kind of intriguing, I guess a little bit intriguing, but especially in the first half, I wasn't latching onto it anywhere near as much as I did with the second half. We found out some things, but going into this book and realizing very quickly that the character we're going to follow the most will be Dalinar kind of set me up for a little bit of disappointment. It's not to say that I don't like Dalinar, I do. I have a certain amount of respect for him, but he's not my favourite character, and to start us off with Kaladin in Way of Kings, then move to Words of Radiance with Shallan, and then move to Oathbringer with Dalinar, to me was just a little bit of a letdown. I would have much preferred to follow Adolin or Shallan or even Navani. As long as it's not a Parshendi, I would have been okay. But Dalinar, he was just the one I needed to know the backstory about the least. Oathbringer is arguably, for me, my least favourite of the first 3 Stormlight Archives books. Especially because of that first half. And now I've seen some reviews where people are saying that Oathbringer reads a lot more slowly than the first 2, and I do agree with that. The first half of the book felt like it moved at a much slower pace, and maybe that contributed to the fact that I found the first half to be rather boring, and that it's my least favourite of the 3. But I will say this, there is a compromise, my lovely Oathbringer fans. Oathbringer, Book 3 in the Stormlight Archives, is my least favourite of the Stormlight Archives, but the cover is my favourite of all the Stormlight Archives. Gorgeous cover. The cover is beautiful, and it actually wraps around, which is really interesting. You can't see all of it here, especially because of the spine here. There's some nice little edging that's going on here that wraps around and connects to what she's got coming out of her hand and all this stuff going on here. I've seen a picture of this online, like where it's not wrapped around, where it's laid out flat, and it is even more beautiful. But yeah, just based on the cover alone, Oathbringer would have to be my favorite. So this is Way of Kings, Words of Radiance. It's more colourful, it's more bright, I think, but out of the three, this cover is definitely the most beautiful, and I was very, very, very excited when this cover arrived because I just love how beautiful it is, and I definitely think I'll be displaying it for a little while. But anyway, I'm now going to go into some spoiler thoughts. This is not a review of Oathbringer. It is still my weekly reading vlog. I don't know if I'm actually going to do a review for this book or not, so in case I don't, this will probably come closest. But I just want to go into my random thoughts and feelings about certain things as I was reading it throughout the week. So if you do not want to be spoiled, thank you for joining me up to this point. And if you're happy to be spoiled, let's go over there right now. So into the spoiler section, just prepare to jump about here and there. But I want to first of all start off by talking about the supposed love triangle between Shallan and Adolin and Kaladin. So this is not something that I even thought was a thing. Maybe by going back to Words of Radiance, I can think of those moments when Kaladin and Shallan were in the chasms and they were having their little teasing moments, and then they were getting closer after Kaladin faced the Kazan fiend. So I guess there was a little something maybe brewing there, but still to me it felt more like people that didn't necessarily like each other because of the whole boots situation, which I do appreciate. Don't get me wrong, that on Shallan's wedding day, Kaladin and Bridge 4 crew send her a pair of boots, paying homage to Words of Radiance. That was pure gold. Well done, Brandon Sanderson. A supposed love triangle where we have a moment where, I think when they're on the ship down in Shadesmar, I keep thinking of it as Damnation because at one point Adolin feels like this is what damnation is, but it's actually Shadesmar. They're in Shadesmar and they're on that ship thing, and Shallan looks at Kaladin and she starts having all these feelings about him, and I'm thinking, wait, what? What's going on here? But the more that Sanderson explored the way that Shallan was feeling around Kaladin, the more I started feeling like these two could actually make a really good couple. Not only do they have opposite things that, not only with the whole opposites attract, but they have different things that would work with each other. It's not to say that Shallan, and we'll go into the aliases of Shallan when we get there, but for the point of the argument I'm making now, I'm just referring to Shallan. Kaladin is someone who will jump into war at a moment's notice or into a battle to try and protect people. He's very much the physical hero, where Shallan, again, not her aliases, but Shallan is more of the researcher, scholar. She can get all the information, and just based on that, they would work very well together. Also, based on the back and forth banters that they've had, I feel like they would work really well together. And I was definitely coming around to that idea that by the time we got to the end with Shallan and that discussion with Adolin, okay, I'm just going to quickly pause here because I want to add something else in. I am not the type of reader on BookTube, if you watch me for long enough, you'll know this, who pull quotes from a book. But so Shallan is having the conversation with Adolin and how she's saying to Adolin's basically resigning to the fact that Shallan should be with Kaladin, and by this point so am I. And Shallan says, no, you don't understand, I want to be with you. And then Adolin says, but he can fly. And Shallan says something to the effect of, oh yes, because you know, that's exactly what it says in the Socialite's Advice to Women's Guide. Something like, now ladies, you must make sure that absolutely the man that you choose must fly. See, this is what I mean. It's witty. Yes. Adolin and Shallan get married. I did not like that we didn't see the wedding. authors, if you are watching this, I don't know if you are, but if you are, and you have planned to have a wedding somewhere with characters that we are invested in, please can you show the wedding? I don't necessarily need the lead up, although the lead up would be fine, but can you please show the wedding? Do you know how much more of a payoff it would be to see vows exchanged, especially to see a wedding ceremony in the Stormlight Archive world, because I've not seen it. We saw the Rush wedding between Dalinar and Navani, but that was Rush. To see an actual proper ceremony, which is what this was going to be between Shallan and Adolin, and then to skip the entire ceremony, come on, Brandon Sanderson. Like, oh, I felt so let down with that. I also want to talk about Navani. Navani has grown on me so much throughout this series, and she's really growing into her own. I really viewed Navani, especially in books 1 and 2, as this queen who was a no muss, no fuss, but I also don't get involved in the war. I just kind of stand off to the side and will tell people what to do, and that's it. When now, she really got involved in things, especially with that big battle towards the end. Navani was doing everything she could to assist everyone, and so was Yasna, for that matter. Yasna is certainly the type of brightness who doesn't really get involved in the battles, but she did in the end, and the fact that she was helping Shallan, and instructing her, which is where they were back in Way of Kings, with Shallan being her ward and Yasna saying to her, now you should do this and pick up this and we're going to do it this way, and I loved that. I quickly want to talk to you guys about Shallan and her aliases. So obviously we have Shallan, the character, the original, the character we've known, we've grown with, we've gotten to know. She's the one who joined Yasna and was learning from her, being her ward and doing all the research she's doing. She's very smart, very intelligent, she draws very well, she's engaged or betrothed to be engaged to Adolin. That's what we know about Shallan. Then we have Vale, who is the total opposite to Shallan. Vale's the one who is part of the Ghost Bloods, and she goes out and does all these missions that no one knows about, so she puts herself into physically precarious situations, and she's not about anything emotional or mushy-gushy. If anything is going on that's really stressing her out, she'd rather have a drink. I love the fact that at the end of the book, Adolin and Vale, and how he sort of just came to terms with Vale and thought of Vale as more of a drinking buddy, which worked for him and worked for her, and I can see how it would, and I just loved that. I can see Adolin walking up to Shallan and saying, so, would Vale like to have a drink with me at this time? And then we have Radiant, obviously, which is her alter ego that is part of the Knights Radiant. I really appreciated getting to learn about all of these different aliases that Shallan has. Now I want to quickly touch upon those that, because they have different names and they're different types of beings, but those who are bonded to our characters, like Syl and Patton and so on and so forth. I would say Spren, but Patton is not a Spren, Patton is a cryptid. So, you know, all those bonded things. Patton is, oh my gosh, Patton is a being that I have grown to love over the course of time of Stormlight Archives, and I just really appreciate having Patton there. There are things that Patton will say that will have me laughing, doubled over so much with laughter. And then there are other moments where Patton will say something where I start thinking, oh yeah, that's a really good point that Patton's making, and I have to keep that in mind for future books and for lore and the way that this world works. And so I do love that Brandon Sanderson mix it up a little bit with Patton, sometimes saying things that are obviously important to Patton, but they can be quite hilarious to us, like, so many lies, for example, you know, versus, I don't know, Shallan, but maybe we should do this. And, you know, so I love that that is mixed up. Syl, I loved Syl in The Way of Kings. I felt that she really was able to break up things here and there, and I don't know if that was Brandon Sanderson's intention to kind of have these nice light moments. And don't get me wrong, there are heavy moments that involve Syl, but I'm just thinking of the standard moments with Syl. Breaking up those heavy moments in Way of Kings with Syl and Kaladin just having their light discussions. But along the way, I feel that Syl has become more than what she seemed to be. And especially when she is helping out Adolin and Shallan and Kaladin in Shadesmar, and like we get to the point where she's pulling them out of the beads. Oh my gosh. I mean, I could say so much about Shadesmar. Oh my gosh. I just love the idea that is Shadesmar. I think Brandon Sanderson obviously would have thought a lot about this world and everything to do with it, and the fact that it is so, to me, just seems like the magic has been amped up like times a million in this world. The Spren are so completely different because we're in Shadesmar, and while they have certain things, like when we had the discussion about the Wind Spren and how Wind Spren exist in Shadesmar but they're not common, and yet in the world away from Shadesmar, everywhere else, aside from Shadesmar, they are the most common Spren that exists. And then we have how all the Spren look completely different in this world. Then we have the beads. The way that Brandon Sanderson wrote those bead scenarios or scenes, oh my gosh, he did them so well. Like, I don't remember who it was, but we have one of the characters, I think it might be Adolin, who is wondering, how can you drown so quickly in beads? Like, you would think it would take a lot longer and that it would be a lot easier, and yet still, the only way to describe it is drowning, because they are all holding their breath as they're falling through the beads. So, you know, it's not like they can breathe while they're falling through it. They are drowning. I wish we could have just stayed in Shadesmar. As much as I did love what happened with Dalinar towards the end, and that contributed in a very big way to our characters getting out of Shadesmar, I would have been absolutely fine if they were still stuck in Shadesmar by the end of the book, because of just how much I love the world of Shadesmar. Can I also just quickly mention that I love with the epilogues how we have Wit. He was in the epilogue of Words of Radiance, and that's where we saw Yasna again, and Wit is saying that story to the insects in the forest that he's in. And then in Oathbringer, he is talking in a line with a guy, and then he has that girl that he gives the doll to and all that kind of stuff. I love ending with Wit. I think it's absolutely the most perfect decision Brandon Sanderson could make, to end with Wit in every epilogue. I think it's just a really good idea. All in all, I'm going to give this book, I think I'm going to give it either 4 or 4.5 stars, because I'm going to take off a star or a half star for the beginning, but otherwise it was absolutely amazing. I also quickly want to make the point to those of you who have been following me because of the Stormlight Archives. Originally, I planned on reading Rhythm of War, book 4 in this series, in January, and just continuing on with my every month of reading Stormlight Archives, but I'm not going to do that in January. I need to take a bit of a break, you guys. Like, seriously, for the last 3 months reading at least 1,000-page one book bind-up, I need a break. I think I'm actually turning my attention to Elantris. So I always read one Cosmere book every single month. And so, or if I don't read a Cosmere book, then I'm reading another Sanderson book. But I believe I'm going to be reading, yes, I am. I'm just looking because down there is my January TBR. I'm reading Elantris in January. That will be it for now. This is me wrapping up my week. I hope that you had a good week. I will be back next week for another weekly reading vlog. But next week will be my last weekly reading vlog for 2020, because I have so many other videos I need to do for the rest of this month. So yeah, I'll be back for one last week for the year next week. Thank you so much for watching. I post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and Sunday for now, and I'll see you again soon. Mwah. Happy reading!